Progressives who definitely need a lifetime supply of prophylactics. And gentlemen, it's time for some more uncomfortable statistics. And this entire video won't be about California per se, but this will be why ever wonder why California is a mess part 2. We have a lack of personal responsibility in this country, and I'm going to give you some more uncomfortable statistics, and this is in the wake of progressives having autistic fits over Trump actually wanting to do something right, a merit-based immigration system rather than an immigration system done via a lottery, an immigration system designed to bring in families and refugees, because it's, the business of America is business, not being a charity case. And I'll mention this again. The immigrants who came here in the 1910s and 1920s didn't have a welfare state to take advantage of. And they came here, they learned English, they got jobs, they had families, they had the intact family structure. So California won't be the main thrust of this, but it will dovetail with part of the reason California has turned into a giant toilet. And people like, who's that Roman Polanski supporter, that guy with a fat face, face bloat Stan Cedar, probably thinks California is a great place to be, but it's not. California's the Mississippi of the West. It's just that people in Mississippi have a little more class. No offense to my friends in Mississippi. So let's look at this first. I'll have all the references. I'm going to put it in a note over on my Facebook page, Old Fart Rants Debunked. I'll put it in a note, and I'll put all the links in the commentary in a note that you can read this along with this video. So we go to table 401.60. Most of my sources are from the National Center for Education Statistics. I also utilize the Census Bureau. But again, all the links are there. This is not a video by like Old Fart Rants or McCain X or Stan Cedar where there are no references. And they just make a series of just so statements. And you're going to believe us because we repeat it a lot. No. Table 401.6, U.S. Department of Education appropriations for major programs by state or jurisdiction. Fiscal years 2012 through 2016. Language assistance or English language acquisition. If you read through the literature, you'll see it called language assistance or English language, acquisition. From fiscal year 2012 through 2016, California received $759 million for language assistance or English language acquisition classes from federal taxpayers. That's $759 million. So taxpayers in Iowa, the ones who actually do pay taxes, are sending money to California to teach people English who, a lot of them aren't going to, as you'll see, don't finish school and have no skills. So money well spent. But you're selfish. You're selfish if you don't want to do that for some reason. Table 107% of high school dropouts, status dropouts, among persons 16 to 24 years old by sex and race ethnicity, but I'm looking at race and ethnicity. I'm ignoring gender because there are only two genders, and I'm ignoring the genders. This is for years 1998 to 2001, table 107. The cumulative average for 1998 through 2001 in the U.S. percent of high school dropouts, status dropouts among persons 16 to 24 years old. 1998 to 2001 cumulative U.S. average 11.2%. 1998 to 2001 cumulative average for those of Hispanic origin 28.2%. 28.2%. 11.2% for all races in the U.S. 28.2% Hispanic origin. And it's not a lack of federal spending that's causing that. If we just spend $1 trillion more, it sounds like a Republican wanting more war. It sounds like John McCain. If we just spend a couple $100 billion more in Iraq, it'll be a success. And if I autistically repeat that all day, it'll be true. They're just like John McCain, except this is education for people who may never learn English, and if they do, they'll drop out of high school. And if they're in California, they'll join a gang and then probably get Medicaid and a good chance that they don't have a father. Tough love, people. Tough love. Some people need tough love. Table 219.80, percentage of high school dropouts among persons 16 to 24 years old, and number of status dropouts by non-institutionalized or institutionalized status, birth in or outside of the U.S., and selected characteristics. This is for years 2010 through 2016. I also had a note. You are far more likely to not be in the labor force if you dropped out of high school, more than twice as likely than if you finished high school. So there we go. California brings in hundreds of thousands of unskilled immigrants. A large portion of them drop out of high school. They are out of the labor force, and what? Nancy Pelosi is going to give them what? Free Medicaid? Vote for me. I'll give you free Medicaid and free food stamps if you vote for me. So again, percentage of high school dropouts among persons 16 to 24 years old. The cumulative average in the U.S. from 2010 through 2016 for all races was 6.8%. 2010 through 2016, 6.8% for all races. 2010 through 2016 cumulative average for those of Hispanic origin, 12.2%. Not quite double, but still very high. So you can see why California, unfortunately, has a lot of immigrants who didn't finish high school, and who knows how many of them actually want to work. A lot of them aren't even in the labor force. It's not that they're unemployed looking for a job. They are out. They are completely out of the labor force. Is that white privilege causing that? And I couldn't get, every year I couldn't find data for every single year for those in the category of what I've just talked about, but drilling it down to those born outside of the United States and of Hispanic origin, 2011, 2012, and 2014 through 2016, the cumulative average for that group, again, for those born out of the United States and of Hispanic origin, percentage of high school dropouts among persons age 16 through 24, for those born out of the U.S., Hispanic origin, 21.5%. So line up 5 of these people. For you progressives listening, if you line up 5 of these people, more than one, I know you can't have like 1.2 people, but you know what I mean. Maybe you don't. You are progressives. You're not very bright. 21.5%. That's more than 1 in 5. And it's not a lack of California spending, which I've covered in other videos. It's not a lack of education spending. It's not a lack of federal subsidies. Skip over some of this, but hit the high points. California ranks number 1 among the 50 states for the percentage of its residents 25 and older who have never completed 9th grade. Again, California ranks number 1 among the 50 states. Now, this is California, progressive stronghold. Smart, progressive people. Mississippi's got dumb, toothless rednecks. California ranks number 1. Them Southern Republicans are stupid, and they ain't got no teeth. California ranks number 1 among the 50 states for the percentage of its residents 25 and older who have never completed 9th grade, and 50th for the percentage who have graduated from high school, according to new data from the Census Bureau. Now, California does have a high percentage of people who have 4-year degrees or better, so it's like feast or famine out there. They're either getting a 4-year degree, and if you get a degree in sociology, you might as well have just never gone to college and just gotten a real job. So it's feast or famine out there. They're either dropping out of high school and then dropping out of the labor force, or they're getting a 4-year degree and then maybe they're working the cash register, or maybe they're getting a 4-year degree and they're a registered libertarian and they're making a lot of money because they went into marketing or something. But the Southerners, them Southern Republicans are stupid. They're thumping the Bible and they got no teeth and they're chewing tobacco. Yeah. Turning to table 104.70. Number and percentage distribution of 6 to 18-year-olds by parents' highest level of educational attainment. Number and percentage distributions of 6 to 18-year-olds by parents' highest level of educational attainment, household type, and child's race, ethnicity. And in the older literature, as I went through a lot of this, it is Table 12. Percentage distribution of 6 to 18-year-olds by parents' highest level of educational attainment, household type, and child's race, ethnicity. Now, I covered 2006. I covered 2008. I covered 2010. I covered 2011, 2013, and 2016. And the categories I covered in all those years, and I'll give you the cumulative total, both household types in one category, single parent and two parent households, and all ethnic groups, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, etc. And I covered two parent households with all ethnic groups, single parent households, all ethnic groups, two parent households, Hispanic, and single parent household, Hispanic. Since California is one of the states with a very high proportion relative to the national average of Hispanics as a total of the entire population in mass. And one thing that kind of is scary and jumps out is the two-parent household Hispanic cumulative average. This is less than high school completion. I should have mentioned that too. I apologize. Less than high school completion for all those categories, both household types, single and two-parent, etc., all ethnic groups, and then this is the percentages for less than high school completion. Now, in the two-parent households for Hispanics in those years covered, 26% reported parents' highest educational attainment as less than high school completion. 26% for two-parent households. For single-parent households and Hispanics, it jumps up to 36.5%. So, you can see that if you're in a two-parent household, the educational outcomes, this isn't always true, but on average, the educational outcomes of the parents is going to be a lot better. And I urge you to go through the data. Look at Asians. Look at how well Asians are doing. Look how much more likely you are in a two-parent Asian household to have both of your parents got degrees. Now, if your parents dropped out of high school, that doesn't mean you're doomed, but I'm just putting this data up. So, two-parent household for Hispanics, the cumulative average less than high school completion of the parents was 26%. When it's single-parent Hispanic, it jumps up to 36.5%. Now, both household types, all ethnicities, it was only 11%. Two-parent households, all ethnicities, 7.2%. Single-parent households, all ethnicities, in the years examined, 18.6% less than high school completion. So you can see the two-parent Hispanics average, parents having less than high school completion, is a lot higher than the single-parent households among all ethnicities. So we have a signal there. People aren't assimilating very well. All this education spending, by golly, if we just spend a couple $100 billion more, I bet if we throw another $300 billion into Mississippi's education system, they're just going to be producing Einsteins. No. So that's kind of that's a distressing signal there. And California has a lot of, unfortunately, truth hurts, Hispanics who don't finish high school. Here's more uncomfortable data. Butthurt remind. Now, if you respond to this, somebody, you probably should do it by video because I don't debate sock puppet accounts, but yelling, being butthurt, and having a little autistic fit doesn't constitute an argument. More uncomfortable data, out-of-wedlock birth rates in states with higher than average Hispanic populations. I covered this previously for California and New Mexico. It's worth revisiting. Births to unmarried women by race and Hispanic origin of mother. Births to unmarried women by race and Hispanic origin of mother. So I'm not going to cover all this. I'll give you the high points. California, all races, because all these states have a higher than average Hispanic population. California average, all races, 2010 through 2017, 39.25% of all births were to unmarried women. And we know the family is important to progressives because how long did we hear them caterwaul about homosexual marriage? Although they don't want to totally liberalize marriage because the Mormons and Muslims aren't as equal as the homosexuals right now. But anyways, so family is important. Marriage is important to these people. But 39.25%, which California is actually lower than the national average, sadly. It's so bad California is actually looking decent. All races, 39.25% from 2010 to 2017. 39.25% of all births in California were to unmarried women. It's amazing. Like in the 40s and 50s, this was looked at as, that's not really a good thing to do, kind of shameful, and now MTV promotes it. And sick people do it over and over again. A lot of people that should not be reproducing. California Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 52.8%, so stridently higher than the state average. But is it higher than the national average? Stay tuned. New Mexico average, all races, 2010 through 2017, 51.73%. More than half of all the births in New Mexico in that 8-year period were to unmarried women. No wonder New Mexico has a lot of poor people. New Mexico Hispanic for that same time frame, 57.95%. I found, amazingly, New Mexico Black was only 55.41%, which was a lot lower than the black average nationally for that time frame. But in New Mexico, 57.95% of all Hispanic births were to unmarried mothers. But that's white privilege or something. Texas average, all races, 2010 through 2017, 41.8%. Texas Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 50.6% of all births were to unmarried women. Arizona average, all races, 2010 to 2017, 45.1%. That's 45.1% of all births there were to unmarried women. Irresponsible people. My gosh, these people that are doing this, do you like, is there like a courtship of more than maybe a couple days here or something, possibly? Do you know how to use a condom? Are you that stupid? If you don't know how to use a condom, you probably shouldn't be having sex. I'm just saying that, for everybody generally. Arizona Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 56.6% of all births, Hispanic births, were to unmarried women. White privilege. Nevada average, all races, 2010 through 2017, 46%. Nevada Hispanic, 2010 to 2017, 54.2%. A lot of fatherless children out there. Now, that doesn't mean that all the daddies were absentee. But remember, marriage is important to these people. So if you can't take the public step of telling your baby mama that I'm going to marry you and be with you the rest of my life, yeah, tells me you might be in trouble. And if you have an absentee father, that doesn't mean you're doomed, but every child needs a father. So you're behind the 8 ball. But that's white privilege or something. Florida average, all races, 2010 through 2017, 47.6%. Can you see this is just going on and on and on? This isn't like in a couple-year outlier where people then suddenly came to their senses. This has been going on for a while. Florida Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 50.9%. We notice a trend here. Holy moly. These people are not family-oriented. They're not responsible. This is what happens when you just bring in droves of unskilled people. I hate to tell you, it's not racist to point out the facts. Colorado average, this is the only state. Colorado, there's something in the water out there causing people to behave for the most part. Colorado average, all races, 23%. Yay, Colorado, you are way below the national average. Less than a quarter of all your births there. Despite having a higher than average Hispanic population, were out of wedlock. Colorado Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, only 34%, much lower than the national average. Something in the water out there in Colorado. Kudos to Colorado. New Jersey, all races, 2010 through 2017, 35.3%. New Jersey Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 59.2%. Wow. 59.2% of all Hispanic births to Hispanic mothers were unmarried in New Jersey from 2010 through 2017. So if you were married and the child came out of the womb, that was like, did they have a parade? What is it with New Jersey? Wow. And overall, it was only 35.3%, but Hispanics are reproducing out there so much that it raised the state. Because New Jersey for whites, it was only 18.5%. Truth hurts. Dishonorable mention. That was it for the states with a higher than average Hispanic population. So an amnesty is not going to raise the labor force participation rate, and an amnesty will only make sure that people take advantage of the welfare state even further. We don't need a wall around the country. We need a wall around the welfare state. Pardon me for yelling. Dishonorable mention, District of Columbia. And if D.C. wasn't receiving so many billions and billions of taxpayer dollars and was this hub of the federal government where the lobbyists and other cockroaches and politicians and other reptilians hung out there, District of Columbia would literally be Detroit. Dishonorable mention, District of Columbia, all races 2010 through 2017, 50.8% of all births there were to unmarried women. District of Columbia Hispanic, 61.2%, much higher than the national average. District of Columbia Black, 2010 through 2017. 78.1%, much higher than the national average. District of Columbia White, 5.7%. Do you think maybe that's why some of the white people, of course, they may be lobbyists too, which would make them likely a cockroach. But you think that's maybe some of the white people in District of Columbia are a little financially better off because they're maybe better planners? 78.1% of black children born out of wedlock in the District of Columbia 2010 through 2017. 61.2% of Hispanics, but only 5.7% of whites. Can you believe that? What's the deal? What's the deal, people? Is there not enough money flowing into D.C.? Even Stan Cedar couldn't say that with a straight face. And he's mentally ill. Dishonorable mention too, Mississippi average, all races 2010 through 2017, 54.07%. So Mississippi's outdoing the District of Columbia. Maybe, is that why Mississippi's got a lot of poor people? I don't know. If you have kids out of wedlock, daddy's not around, and you drop out of school, and there's a high STD rate there, I think that's why Mississippi sucks. Let's just be honest. Mississippi sucks. Thankfully, I do not live there. Mississippi Hispanic, 2010 through 2017, 54.52% of all births were out of wedlock. Unmarried women. Mississippi Black, 2010 through 2017. I went over this in my why ever wonder why Mississippi is a mess video. 80.6% of blacks born out of wedlock, 2010 through 2017. That's why a lot of black people are poor there. If you drop out of school, you have children out of wedlock, you become an alcoholic, probably not going to succeed in life. Mississippi White, 2010 to 2017, 32.35%. Higher than all Mississippi. Mississippi is above and beyond. When it comes to failures, Mississippi is right up there. U.S. average all races 2010 through 2017, 40.36%. That's really high. That's sad. USA average Hispanic 2010 through 2017, 53%. If you're making $7.25 an hour and running a cash register, don't have kids yet. If that's going to be your career, don't have kids. If you're smart enough, like most people, to move on to something else, get a better job later, then have the kids. But don't have it to an absentee daddy while you're making $7.25 an hour, working a cash register, and then have a kid, and then wonder why I'm broke. USA average Hispanic 2010 through 2017, 53%. USA average white 2010 to 2017, 29%. USA average black 2010 through 2017, 71.1%. The black community has destroyed the nuclear family, and that's your fault. In the states that I cover that have a much larger than average Hispanic population, note, make sure you take a gander at all the census, race, ethnicity designations. California, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Colorado, and New Jersey, the Hispanic out of wedlock birth rate was 52%. The only state that was not any sort of outlier was Colorado. The overall average for all races in those states, unmarried births to unmarried women, 41.2%. So that's higher than the national average slightly. Sans Colorado, the average was 54.6% for Hispanic, which is slightly above the national average. Put it this way, it doesn't matter. Most states, the Hispanic community, a lot of unmarried births. And if that's the case, you're not planning your family. For all races in those states, sans Colorado, it was 43.8%. America has a problem. We have a lot of unskilled or at least very irresponsible immigrants failing to finish high school, dropping out of the labor force, and having children who don't finish high school drop out of the labor force. And Bernie Sanders is there with your wallet to save the day. We will need doctors and nurses to take care of the boomers. So if there's doctors and nurses in Mexico that are qualified to do the work and the hospitals will hire them, bring them in. If they don't speak English and they have no skills and they dropped out of school in the 8th grade and they have AIDS or HIV, no thanks. I'll get to that in a second about everybody having merit. A merit-based immigration is something I've been in favor for a long time. Jobs are merit-based, always have been. A meritocracy in the workplace, and this is where it gets kind of sad for some people. A meritocracy in the workplace dictates that the best employees get better schedules, better pay, and promotions. Imagine that. If you're a slacker, you're not going to get promoted and you're not going to get a good raise. Oh my gosh, when did that start? That's been around as long as people have been around. If you can't run the forklift, if you can't drive the truck, if you can't get enough units per hour, then guess what? They will find something else for you to do or let you go. If you can't manage the production floor effectively and it's an organized chaos, someone else will do it for you. Immigration should be no different. There's nothing wrong with a meritocracy because the business of America is business, not global or domestic handouts. I've said it many times before. I will say it again. America's people were voting for crazy people like FDR and Truman back in the 40s and 50s with one important caveat. The people voting for them themselves weren't crazy, and they practiced that lost craft called personal responsibility. Many of those folks were those who emigrated to these United States from Europe in the 1910s and 1920s. These folks didn't have a welfare state to take advantage of, even if they were privy to doing so. They learned English, they integrated. They learned English if they didn't know it prior. They integrated, they built families, and most important, the family unit was largely intact. Many of those folks were part of the greatest generation that helped us win World War II and turned America into an economic powerhouse. These folks also, unfortunately, voted in polls like FDR, Truman, and LBJ, socialists who started this grand welfare state, which is now costing you trillions. That all started to change in the 60s, and here we are seeing the nuclear family crumbling, and a lot of emasculated soy boys like Bernie Sanders, Stan Cedar, old face bloat Stan Cedar, Bill Maher, Bruce Jenner, and beta male O'Rourke. I blame we the people as much as I blame the cockroaches in Washington. There are a lot of folks in this country that need some tough love, some personal responsibility, and probably a lifetime supply of condoms and IUDs. If you're in a single-parent household, you are not doomed. Nobody is saying that. However, those in single-parent households are more likely to have an absentee father or mother as opposed to regular visits or shared living arrangements. And those in single-parent households, especially those who were not born here, are more likely to drop out of high school, far more likely to live with a parent who has no education, and far, far more likely to not be in the labor force. So what good would it do to bring in hundreds of thousands of people who aren't going to participate in the labor force? You tell me. This is a huge problem. It's also become an expensive problem as taxpayers are held hostage by those who seek to buy Peter's vote with Paul's money. I'm talking about you, Bernie, you toothless hillbilly. Ergo, we do need to shift from a family and refugee immigration program to an economic and merit-based immigration system. This is where responding to Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi says, nobody is without merit. No. Folks who have HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, STDs, gang affiliations, lack of a family structure have no business being here. If we didn't have an extravagant welfare state / cradle-to-grave entitlement structure, this would be less of a problem. And Republicans and Democrats aren't going to do anything about entitlements. It's going to continue on autopilot. Vote Libertarian. You've been warned. But we do have those obstacles to deal with, and bringing in more unskilled labor that isn't participating in the labor force isn't going to solve our oncoming economic problems. It will exacerbate them. It's not racist to point out that California has a lot of unskilled Hispanics in single-parent households that aren't participating in the labor force. Merit-based immigration would solve much of that. It's not racist to point out that many of them are on welfare and have been for generations. It's not racist to point out that California's public education system is failing all ethnic groups there, especially Hispanics and blacks. Just as it's not racist to point out that Mississippi has a lot of white trash that have kids out of wedlock, no family structure, dropping out of high school, high illiteracy rates, and lots of STDs. Just as it's not racist to point out that Mississippi's black residents are usually poor because daddy isn't around. It's not racist to point out the truth. But some in this age of massive political correctness want to make it that way and shout down anyone who dares oppose them. I guess if white privilege, and if you look at the data, maybe Asian privilege too. Those dang Asians, they're so smart and responsible. Dang them. I guess if white privilege means I had two parents that were always around, always worked, always gave me more love than I deserved, and always provided for me, then I am guilty as charged. Bill Maher is right about one thing, all I disagree how he arrives at this conclusion, and I will amend his quote slightly. Bill Maher is right about one thing. Many Americans, including Bill Maher, are ignorant and very irresponsible and stupid. It's not my fault whites in Mississippi are failing, and it's certainly not my fault that California, bringing in droves of unskilled Hispanics, is failing. Our current immigration system is failing Asian and Hispanic immigrants who are educated, who do have two-parent households, who are practicing that lost art called personal responsibility. As far as most progressives go who disagree with me, void of facts, it's easy to be conspicuously compassionate. That's you, Stan Cedar. When you do not, and Bernie Sanders, it's easy to be conspicuously compassionate when you do not pay the cost. Have a nice day, and you have been warned.